I had such a good time talking to Rasheed today. Rasheed Ali is one of my Arabic students and a graduate of the Arabic in 60 Steps Intensive from the USA. I really, really hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, welcome to all of you watching from home and a very warm welcome to Rasheed Ali to the Arabic with Sam podcast. It gives me great pleasure, Brother Rasheed Ali. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today, Akhi?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. I'm doing very well. I get to talk to my teacher, Sam, Suleiman. I'm happy. It's a good day. It's the highlight of my day today.
Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. Well, actually, you are the first guest now with kind of changing things back to Arabic with Sam, actually. Obviously we had lots of guests actually as Arabic in 60 Steps, but you have the crown, the honor of being our first back here. So what I want to do, inshallah, is I want to talk a little bit about your journey learning the Arabic language a little bit. I kind of want to talk about how you even kind of decided to start learning the Arabic language and what your motivations were, a bit about your background and how you came in touch with it. And we'll come into talking a little bit about how you know me and what kind of program we've done together and stuff as well, inshallah. So firstly, would you mind kind of firstly just talking about when you first decided to learn Arabic as a language, like a bit about your background and when you came in touch with Arabic as a language?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to tell you about my background and make this more of a dialogue than a speech. So have some good questions for me as I tell you the journey. But I'd say I first wanted to learn when I was a kid. We had a Qur'an in the house. So my parents are Muslim. I'm Muslim. I live in the States. My family became Muslim in the 60s and 70s, during the time of some may know Malcolm X. So there was a Quran in the house where I grew up, and I was taught Surah Ikhlas as a child before I could really remember anything. So I don't actually remember learning it, but that's what I wanted to learn. And I would not have any video games or cell phones because we didn't have those back then. So I would walk around looking at the different books in the house, and I saw the Quran, and I picked it up and wanted to know what these funny squiggles were. That was the first time I wanted to learn.
MashaAllah. Were you kind of sent to a madrasa when you were younger?
I wasn't. So where I grew up, and part of, I guess I'd say the community or culture I was coming from, there wasn't the same emphasis on like madrasas and these different tutors and things like there are in other cultures, because Islam in America has been, for the large portion of it, is somewhat new. So a lot of people didn't know how to speak Arabic, didn't know a lot about Islam, I'd even say. So It wasn't part of the culture yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. And that's actually something that I actually wasn't aware of about your family, actually. I wasn't aware that Islam was that new in your family. It's quite rare that you come across people who Islam is that new. Do you know what I mean? Like quite often you're talking to people from Muslim majority countries who their Islam has been in their family since, like early trade with Arab settlers and things like that. Who knows when? Yeah, quite often. Yeah, subhanAllah. That's very, very interesting. Okay, so you're kind of so you have an experience like lots of Muslim children, right? Like you see a Quran in the house, you see the squiggles. The squiggles in the Quran aren't the same squiggles that you're seeing in books at school and things like that, right? But when did it kind of click that it was a language, that it was like a language that people speak and use for things other than the squiggles in the Quran?
I don't know, because I have 4 children myself, and 3 of them are over the age of 5, and I've come to learn that anything that happens before they're 5 years old, they just don't remember. So I don't really know when I realized it was a language, but it was probably the second language I ever heard of. I might have heard of Chinese in school somewhere. So he sounds like he's speaking Chinese, but I had already seen and been exposed to Arabic because I knew Assalamu alaikum, I knew the Fatiha, I knew Surah Al-Ikhlas. So I knew these things, but I don't think I ever looked at it as a language as much as they're just different words that mean different things. So I don't know. I can't answer that really.
But where you're from in the US, is there a large Arabic speaking community, or is that not a demographic that makes up most of the Muslims?
No, it's not. So I actually grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But because of just kind of culture and community ties, we went to Detroit very often. And as some people know, Detroit is where Islam kind of took root in America in the 30s. So there's a lot of people that have grandparents and great grandparents that are African American in Detroit that are Muslim. But similar to certain parts of like what I've learned as I've gotten older, certain parts of rural like Pakistan or other places, they don't necessarily learn a lot about the religion or about the language. They're still kind of newer to it, and that's how we were. So there wasn't a lot of people talking about how to read and practice and whatnot. It was more so a cultural phenomenon that kind of came about, like
Okay.
similar tradition to how, like I remember my father used to talk about how he knew and kind of grew up with like Siraj al-Hajj or Farrakhan Khan or Zayd Shakir and different people because there were so few of them, they all knew each other. And then they went off into their different ways of practicing.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that my generation and those who are a little bit older than me are the first ones who are starting to really travel and learn and study the language and become fluent. You know, I think the first Medina graduate that I know of from the States that was African American is probably like 50 years old. So, and you know, obviously he wasn't born in 1930. So there's a lot of growth that has happened there. So for
Yeah.
me, I didn't really know. I just kind of knew some things. I didn't really know I could learn it because it was different from Spanish and it wasn't taught in school. All we learned is Spanish in the States, really. I mean, all we learned is the second language in the States when I was growing up was Spanish, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of French. I
Hmm.
went to a private school, so I got to learn some Latin.
Hmm.
But Arabic was never offered, and there weren't very many Arab kids around. There's a lot of Somali kids. I knew some Somali words, a lot of Pakistani kids. I knew how to speak to Abaji and to get where to get the biryani, but just wasn't that Arabic component until I was in high school, where I was fortunate to go to a high school that was paired with a community college, and some of the community college students were studying Arabic, and they started to teach me. So that's when I kind of really began to. That's when I got my Aleph Batat in high school.
Okay. Right. Just for other international listeners, what does high school mean for you? Like, what age are you talking about?
Sure. So, high school is the third kind of tier in schooling. You have elementary school from ages 5 to 10-ish. Then you have middle school from 10 to 13, roughly. And then you have high school, which is 14, 15, 16, 17, and you usually
Mhm.
graduate when you're 18 and begin college or
Okay.
university,
Sure.
as my buddy
Okay.
Sam calls it.
MashaAllah. And okay, cool. It's interesting that you mentioned kind of seeing like an improvement and a progression in uptake of the Arabic language in the US. Like, it's not something we were talking about before we actually started this podcast. I wanted to ask you whether Nouman Ali Khan, like the institution of Bayyina TV and stuff like that too, had any impact on your desire to learn Arabic. Because like whatever you think about Bayyina TV or about Nouman Ali Khan or anything like that, like I know there's always drama between all of our teachers and stuff on YouTube and things like that. So I just caveat it with whatever you think about people. You can't question that. Like the desire to learn Arabic in the English speaking world has been massively impacted by Nouman Ali Khan. Like even me and my teaching of the Arabic language, no doubt, even like the story walkthroughs and stuff that I do, like I've got no doubt in my mind that they're influenced somehow by how I listened to him deliver those that early like tafsir of Juz Amma, for example, and things like that. I just wondered if you had noticed that as well in the US.
Yeah, I mean, usually when I have conversations with people, that's one of the first programs they bring up. It's either that or the Medina books. And that's what
Okay.
everyone always talks about, Nouman Ali Khan or the Medina books. I think there's a couple other programs out there that are popular. And then I say, well, what about Arabic with Sam? You know, what about 60 Steps? And now we talk about Arabic Unlocked, right?
MashaAllah.
But normally those are the ones I hear about. But it didn't really so much influence me because I'm old. When I was in my teenage years and 20s, there were no programs. There was one program based out of Detroit called the Mali Institute, and it was focusing on grammar structure and verb forms, and it didn't really have a conversational or vocabulary component. Um, it didn't have some of the things that I was kind of looking for.
Mhm.
So I kept looking, and my the lack of tools and resources kind of uh, dampened my desire or passion to learn until COVID. Really, COVID is when, 'cause I took the class during COVID, didn't I?
What, the intensive with me? Yeah. You're in the very interesting COVID cohort, which was the first intensive we ever did. I believe we started in was it April, something we started in that year, because we went through the whole of Ramadan, I remember, and I think that we went through the Arabic in 60 Steps intensive for about 3.5 months, something like that. We spent together. So what year would that have been? Was it 2020, 21, something
I
like
think it was
that?
21. I think it was 21 that we did that. I'm not certain, but I think it was. I
Okay.
know that I had some friends in some. So I was involved with the masjid probably since 2010. You know, kind of rounding out my 20s. I got really involved in the masjid. Started my family and such. So then there were people would come to the masjid to try and teach the Medina books or this other blue book that they always have. And I would study and focus, but then they would only stay for a weekend and leave. So there was not really any traction. There was a couple of brothers from Sudan that attended my masjid, so I would sit with them and try and learn. But you know how it is when you meet somebody and they're not really a teacher, but they just happen to speak the language. You pick up a couple words, they help you do some reading, and then you kind of have some tea and talk about life and end up missing the whole class. It's more a social gathering, right? But I had one teacher, Muhammad, and he was very close and dear to me, and that's where I have a lot of love for Sudan. In fact, after Fossa, I would like to learn the Sudanese dialect. And I named my son after his son, Thoha. So that was a part of my journey as well. But after that, I just tried to learn to read more fluently. And then there was the local masjid I go to near my home. They had a class where they would help people to read and to recite. And I noticed I was slower than the 20, being probably 37 years old. I was slower to read than some of the 20-year-olds or the 15-year-olds. I was like, I don't like this. I want to change that. So when I would go for a run, I would listen to different podcasts on Arabic. And there's one podcast that stands out more than the most, and that's Sam. That's Suleiman. So,
and now you're a guest. You're our welcome guest on that very podcast, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. So I enjoyed listening to those, and I tried to reach out to him to find out more about his program, and he kept ducking me. I'm joking. It was kind of hard to reach for like the first 3 weeks, but eventually I figured out how to sign up, and I wanted to sign up, and it was tough. So I decided that I would go all in and do the intensive, and that was probably one of the first steps in my journey of learning, speaking, and reading Arabic.
You know, I think I've been thinking about this a lot recently, about the merit of committing to something intensively. Like, even in my life, there's lots of things that I would really love to learn well. Like, there's lots of different languages that I'd love to learn well, and there's also like other skills that I want to get better at. Like, I want to get better at business, I want to get better at calisthenics, I want to get better. Just there's other things I'd like to get good at. I'd like to get back into jiu-jitsu at some point. But really, you can't really do everything. Like, if you were to have maybe five disciplines that you wanted to get good at in 2024, for example, like, a lot of people take the approach of trying to squeeze them all in to your week somehow, have like a really busy schedule where you're switching between different tasks and stuff. But I've really come to believe that there are kind of fundamental things you need to be doing every day. Like, you need to be doing the fara'id of your religion, you need to be taking care of your family, you need to be doing like the basic things to take care of your health. But in terms of like pursuing excellence in particular disciplines, I think you would be best served if you spent 2024 doing 2 intensive months of one language you want to learn, 2 intensive months, and really seek, like, not that you can achieve mastery in things in 2 months necessarily, but have that kind of attitude, like, have beyond your fara'id, not just in the religion but in life. Like, once your work is taken care of, your family taken care of, you've taken care of your obligations, the rest of the time should be for mastery in one particular thing. Because I think humans kind of overestimate how good we are at multitasking. I'm not convinced we're very good at all at it, which is a shame, because lots of us would really like to be. But so I think there's a lot of merit. I'd be interested to know if that was sort of your experience as well. No, I mean, you're mashallah, you're a family man, you've got lots of children and stuff, mashallah. So I doubt it felt very much like you weren't juggling lots of things. But I mean, did you find that it was Or maybe I'll phrase it as a question, actually. Like, whilst you're doing the intensive program with me, were you also doing lots of other things as well? Or for that period of your life where you sort of, I take care of my main stuff, but then outside of that, I am Sam's Arabic student. What was your routine like during that time?
Interesting question. What was my routine like during that time? Um, well, I'll answer the direct question and then also the implied question, right? So the direct question, what was my routine like? I think I was focusing on family, of course. The silhouette, making sure I attend those. Um, Trying to build my marriage. I mean, I was probably still within my 10 years, so I was still building my marriage, understanding how to be a good husband. Uh, at that time, I only had 3 children, but there was some challenges at that time with that. So, there's a lot of things going on. I also was at that time I was not doing Boy Scouts, but I was doing a reading. So I had a teacher from Egypt that I would recite to every morning. We went over a Tajweed book, and then we would probably take about 4 pages from the Quran each day. Um, so I was doing that as well, which could be argued that that's more tangential as opposed to a separate item because it's similar. It's all Arabic, right? Um, yeah, but I'd say to kind of your point, I'm never going to be able to put a full intensive on something, right? Because I'm going to have children, I'm going to have parents, I'm going to have the gym, I'm going to have running, I'm going to have squats, hopefully. Uh, and I'm also going to have memorization. I'm going to have hobbies. I'm going to want to go kayaking. I'm going to want to, clean my car, or take, maybe play with a cat, get a cat or something. I don't know, but there's always going to be things taking my attention, not to mention the job, right? And corporate jobs can be sometimes 50, 60 hours a week. There's always going to be something vying for your attention. So I have seen often a lot of people say, cut out this time, dedicate it to it. I don't find that to be realistic, personally. I think it has benefited a lot of people. I think that the example of the Hufaz is really the best example. Of course, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being a Hafiz, right? And those who are Hafiz to follow his example is to take part of what you know in review, take part of what you know in learning, and to be consistent each day for your dedicated time, your dedicated place. Some even say your dedicated clothing, right? But to make sure that you have that. For those who are listening that do maintain their 5 salat or 6 salat, if you include tahajjud, you know that there's nothing that's going to get in your way for that, right? The sky could be falling, but you're not going to be late for Asr. It's just what you do. It's ingrained in you. It's not a choice. It's not an option. Maybe it was early on, but at some point, salat is just, it's who you are. It's, if you didn't do it, you would feel like you're not you, and therefore you have to get back to who you are. I say the same thing is with these studies, whether it's Arabic or artificial intelligence or computer science or real estate or whatever your passion, hobby, or interest is. It needs to be something that you take time every day to review. You take time every day to learn anew, and you build it into your sacred space and sacred time to do that thing. If all of us are striving to memorize Quran, which we should all strive to do somewhat, then we'd have some kind of routine that we can create kind of habitual triggers off of, right? So if you sit for 30 minutes in the morning reading Quran, after you do that, sit for 30 minutes and study Arabic, or sit for 30 minutes and study real estate, or study how to get your beard to look like Suleiman's. Whatever your interest is, then stack the habit upon what is good, inshallah.
Habit stacking is that's a very, very interesting point for sure. That's I've found that since I've been a Muslim, it's something I've been able. Obviously, the salah is an incredibly powerful way of doing that, particularly Fajr. Particularly, I find habit stacking on top of Salat al-Fajr is like that's a very, very powerful part of the day, obviously, and stuff as well. Yeah, subhanallah. Yeah, I find particularly for the people who have the means, I would very highly recommend people who want to have good routine in their life to try to live somewhere along the equator because having your it's quite a high investment thing and it's not available to everybody. So I caveat it with for the people for whom it is possible. But since I've been living in Somalia, just having your salah times at the exact same time every day has had a massive impact on my ability to be consistent on all of my pursuits, really. Like here, Salat al-Fajr in the masjid is always like 5 a.m. Okay? Salat al-Dhuhr is always 12:30. Salat al-Asr is always 3:30. Salat al-Maghrib is always 6 p.m. And then Salat al-Isha is always about 7:15. Always. There might be like 10 minutes each side, maybe, like in terms of the adhan. But in terms of like when you're actually like the salah times in the masjid and the time of the day that it's it's like I'd really struggle to move to somewhere that isn't along that line.
It's funny you say that because when the springtime comes around and like right now Ramadan falls in the springtime for my region of the United States, and right after Ramadan and into the end of spring, before I can focus on my new habits and my new activities and my summer things, I have to do a conscious effort for about 2 weeks to start shifting my mindset to, okay, I need to start taking naps because East is going to be at 10. It's no longer at 6 p.m. It's at 10 p.m. And just the shift of going from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then staying at 10 p.m. for a while and then going back down to 6 p.m. and adjusting my schedule to make sure that running my kids to football or to jujitsu or trying to have dinner or cleaning the house or just trying to get enough sleep in, right? Because when you have to go to sleep at 10 p.m. and then wake up at 3 a.m. for Fajr, you have to rearrange your day to be successful because otherwise it's just not going to work. And you have to cut out time every year to prepare for that adjustment.
Tell me about it. Even if I think if ever like Somalia wasn't to work out for me and my family or whatever, I wouldn't be looking at going back up to I'd be looking at going around the earth somewhere. I'm like drawing a line across from Somalia, thinking maybe Malaysia would make more sense because it's honestly it has such a big impact on your life, like your sleep routine. Even for my children, like my children's sleep routine is dark at 6 p.m. They know that their body's starting to get tired. They're ready for bed by 7 or 7:30 or whatever. But like in the UK, I try telling Yusuf it's time for bed and it's daylight at 11 p.m. at night. And and he's like, no, it's not. Of course it's not. Of course it's not bedtime, So that's a big mushkila. No. So that's something for those for whom it is possible. But of course most of our students, in fact, who are from typically actually at the 60 Steps program, our students are very heavy, like UK, USA, Canada, Arabic Unlocked. And Arabic Unlocked is not like that. It's been really, really interesting. We've got loads of students in Malaysia. Malaysia is like our biggest kind of student base, and then throughout the rest of the world, it's fairly even. Like I know the UK because Arabic Unlocked is UK based and stuff. UK is a big part of it, but so the students we're kind of serving are in slightly different places, but so we're kind of coming on to a point now where the next product we're going to be running at Arabic Unlocked is an intensive. It's something that obviously I did with Arabic Unlocked, and it's something that I really enjoyed. So some of the deepest relationships I've ever actually had, maybe in my life, I've actually been with like some of you guys, like some of you graduates of the program and stuff. Like, and I really mean that, like, because you think the amount of time that we spend together in that short period of time, like over 3 months, we're spending like 4 hours a day together. And the Arabic Unlocked intensive that we're doing 4 hours as well. We're doing Saturdays and Sundays, like 2 hours on each day. So and we're doing a 10-week one. This is 10 weeks at Arabic Unlocked. So we're talking 40 hours together. And the lessons are quite intense. Like studying online, the interaction is surprisingly intense because it's so focused, isn't it? Like it's so channeled into kind of one screen, whereas sort of in a classroom, there's lots of kind of gaps in the classroom mechanics for you to take a break and stuff, aren't there? If you know what I mean. Like other students are being tested on something, or I don't know, handing out the books or whatever. There's just time, isn't there? There's like kind of gaps in a classroom, but there isn't really that. Yeah, there aren't really those kind of gaps in these online lessons, and so it's something that I'm really looking forward to, inshallah. But I think maybe the challenge will be delivering a different program, because obviously we're delivering Qur'anic Arabic Unlocked, which is a program that was created by the team over there before I joined. I've had some input on it, and the intensive version of it is one that I've kind of been developing the plans for delivering it live, because it's a different dynamic delivering a program live, of course. Even like at Arabic Unlocked, the team have kind of understood something that I wish I understood when I first wrote the 60 Steps program, that delivering through like a pre-recorded course, it has its own nuances that you need to consider, like the student's attention span, for example. If you remember back to some of the stuff we go through in step 1 of the 60 Steps program, like we cover so much in that step. We cover just so much. Like that step really could have been one video just on definiteness. Just on like what happens when you put an L at the beginning of a word, changing tanween to having one dhamma or something. Like that could have been one video on its own. That could have been a lovely 4-minute video, that on its own. And then like the basics of gender could be its own video. And Arabic Unlocked have kind of done that. Like what I kind of burden my students with in one lesson. At Arabic Unlocked, they've got like a module for it, which is interesting. Like looking back, that is how I would have. If I were to re-record the 60 Steps program, I may consider doing it like that. They have their own roles. They serve their own types of students, don't they? If you know what I mean. Like so, lots of people. Like I had the awareness that the 60 Steps program, we inherited lots of students from previous programs. They'd done a few chapters of Al Arabiya Bayna Yadayk, or they'd done a few chapters of the Medina books, or like I realized we inherited students like that, so they could usually handle it. And I enjoyed that first lesson. I enjoyed giving my little drawing of the deaf general dialing up a number. That most of the people won't know what that analogy is, but just to give like a brief summary of it. Like when you're trying to memorize things, our brains often remember things that are really kind of weird and abstract. Sometimes even the weirder the better. You don't necessarily want to have a normal story when you're trying to memorize things. So there are kind of these 4 attributes of Arabic words that they need to agree on in a phrase. So if we're going to say, for example, something like, a tall man or a beautiful house or a clever boy, things like that. Like these 2 words need to agree in definiteness, gender, case, and number. I'm not going to go through all the nuances of those in this podcast. I won't get carried away with it. But like to help students remember, definite, as in deaf, gender, general, number, and case. I drew this just horrible drawing of a general wearing like a general's hat for the gender, dialing a number, as in number, like dual, singular, whatever, on a suit. Yeah, you remember it because it was horrific. So of course you remember.
It was good. I really enjoyed it. I was a fan of all the steps up until which was it?
Hollow verbs.
Yes. Yes, I hated that one. I hated that one with a passion.
Yeah, hollow verbs is that's a tricky one. Yeah, I remember you raising this concern with me partway through our intensive, or you might have actually raised it a few weeks after we'd gone past it. It might have taken several business weeks to catch up with you to what they actually are. I don't know, but yeah, I remember you mentioning firstly, the fact that they even exist is a surprise because you're used to all of these lovely 3-letter verbs like kataba and shariba. You're used to these lovely 3-letter, like triliteral root verbs. And then all of a sudden, you've got these ones with a vowel in the middle, and the vowel changes, but not always, and it changes in the past tense, but not to all of the persons in the same way. There's all of this to go through, But anyway, yeah, that is for the 60 Steps program. I think hollow verbs is and final week verbs, but for different reasons. Those 2, like when I've marked exams, even since yourself, when I've marked exams, if I ever fail students, it's almost always on hollow verbs, or it's on step 12, like the mansoob of verbs. Like when you say like uridu an, and then the verb that comes after it needs to be mansoob. Yeah, uridu an akula, like I want to eat something. Like they almost always forget that things that come after n are mansoob. It's strange because it's not the most complicated thing. It's like mansoob is easier to learn with verbs than majzoom, right? The majzoom when we're squeezing vowels out of verbs and stuff, and hollow verbs in the majzoom is a whole other thing, right? Like remembering
hollow verbs altogether is a whole other thing.
Yeah. But people, I don't know, like it's a far less common mistake with majzum verbs. Students seem to be okay with it. I don't quite know, but there you go. Yeah. So
So as you've given me, and I'm grateful that you've given me some permission to teach like my family and some people like in the masjid, from the 60 steps. What I found is that giving them a ramp of vocabulary before beginning has been kind of foundational,
okay.
to be able to get them to understand that what they're learning is grammar, right? Because it wasn't always clear for me if I was going to be like fluent at the
Okay.
end.
Okay, no, that's a really good point.
And being able to understand that this is really grammar. So as I've gone on to other classes and talked to different teachers and such, I can probably say, hey, I don't call it an ijazah, but I have a certificate in grammar, right? And I don't have a breadth of vocabulary. I can't pull it out fluently, and I may need to review the grammar. But when people say grammar is the hardest part, or even some teachers say you don't even need to learn grammar, I actually feel very comfortable and confident being in that space and saying, okay, well, once I get the vocabulary and the fluency together, I'm going to be a very, strong, strong speaker, inshallah. Right. And I appreciate that. And I give you the credit and may Allah reward you for that.
I mean, well,
So yeah, I do kind of start on vocabulary so that people can have some meat to chew when we start getting into this is how you do a hollow verb, or this is how you do mansub, as opposed to trying to learn the vocabulary and then apply the rules to the vocabulary in the way. That's something that I found that has been helpful for me in helping people along the way.
vocabulary is there's no doubt that vocab is probably the biggest hurdle in terms of like what attention is paid to it. Like I think you're right to say that the grammar, even for native Arabic speakers, is a real challenge. Like the things that we're kind of we were quite precise about on the 60 Steps program about like case endings and things like that.
Yes.
Lots of native Arabic speakers struggle with that. Lots do.
Yeah.
But lots of attention's given to it, so it almost balances it out. But that's not the case with vocab, right? Like vocab is massively important, but we're not having like whole vocab courses the way that we have whole grammar courses, if you see what I mean.
Right.
Like recently, I've been doing a lot of research in like the teaching English space. Like I recently enrolled in a TEFL course, and I've been paying attention to what they do in the TEFL world, because they're very fluency orientated, but they're completely spoken English orientated. Like native English speakers deliver the whole courses, the whole lessons in English. Like it's a completely different approach to what we often do with Arabic. And I've noticed that they have loads of courses that are like English vocabulary courses. Like they'll have like a whole textbook and stuff which is English vocabulary, and that's something that I'd like to incorporate into our work at Arabic Unlocked a lot more, because that's the speaking and vocabulary generally, even not in speaking, but vocabulary is something that we can do much better on. And I think you actually get more, you get to apply grammar more when you have more vocabulary as well. Like like if you've got 1,000 words to put into those structures and into those rules, you get a lot more out of it, don't you? That's a really interesting point. Like, do you think with the 60 Steps program, because we just kind of have like a fairly uniform template of sort of 10 words a lesson. We typically try to use them in the exercises, but they're more just a list of words to learn. Do you think it is a case of learning just more words, or do you think it is a case of? Because I don't think students after lesson 10, I think lots of students are already behind on vocab. Like, so it's maybe. Go ahead, that's the question, really.
So I'm in a course right now to increase fluency, and there's some things I like and some things that I don't like about it. But the thing I would take from 60 Steps and from the course I'm doing right now is that the initial module has to be the harf, right? The actual letters. And that exists. I think after that should be like 500 words, right? And it could be in the format that I know you love, which is like stories, right? In context, getting the vocabulary and stories in context, which I think is key, especially for novice and beginners, right? And then once you have these 500 words, and you're like, oh yeah, I see kataba, I know what that is, or oh yeah, I know I know I know these words. Then going into some of the vocabulary that's specific for grammar, right? So like the numbers, that's very specific for grammar. There was also some other lessons, Kaana and her sisters, Inna and her sisters, right? Those are kind of vocabulary based lessons, even though they're still grammatical because you have to know mansub and whatever. But knowing just enough to be able to get through those lessons so that you can kind of take those on as vocabulary. And then because that makes the transition between, okay, we just did like 500 words. Now we're doing grammatical type words and then going into grammar. Now that I've understood all these different things about Mansub, I've understood Kaana and Inna and her sisters, I've understood some vocabulary, I get to hollow verbs. I'm like, oh, okay, this is bearable. You know what I mean? Because I kind of have a basis to understand how raw is going to be different, Korea is going to be different than some of the others. And that's what I've kind of reflected on and where I've kind of landed so far. And then after that, I'm still the jury's still out on whether I feel like advanced vocabulary can be done through what when I think of you, I think of like osmosis, just kind of consuming it within context, like link.com, that kind of format, or if memorizing the conjugation of a specific verb and then memorizing the plural and the singular of a specific noun is the way to go. I'm practicing the latter right now, but I'm still trying to figure out where my opinion lies. I lean towards you because you're my teacher, but I'm still trying to figure out my own opinion.
I think there's those strategies, you should utilize them until you've exhausted them. Like, for example, you can expand your vocabulary massively by just knowing how to fully conjugate a verb, right? Yes. Rather than just knowing kataba, you know, like whatever it is, 50 words, if you can use it with all the different persons, right? But I think like with each of the verb forms, like personally, like I kind of even still do it now actually. Like when I come across a new verb that I've not encountered before, for example, if I already am familiar with a verb that looks like that, I can just kind of put that in the template, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But like that, it gets to a point when that's kind of served its role. Like you've used that as kind of scaffolding, a kind of a go-to verb. I think I've made videos previously going through like a go-to verb for each one of the verb forms. For example, like my kind of go-to verb for form 2 is sallama. Like because I just know sallama, yusallimu, and then I like the mustard of these taslim of that as well. So if I ever come across a form 2 verb, like, darrasa, I know, sallama yusallimu, so it must be darrasa yudarrisu, and you kind of just get used to picking up those patterns. So I like to have like a go-to, and similarly with plurals of words, right? I'm just kind of familiar enough with enough plurals now that if I come across a word I've never seen before, like I can probably infer the plural because I've seen enough words that and I've seen their plurals for enough words that look like it. So. And I think that's smart. There's certainly a lot to be said. I think something that I'd like to do with our intensive program at Arabic Unlocked is to make use of the time in between classes a little bit, because obviously we've got a whole 5-day working week in between our classes. Now we've got Monday through Friday and then Saturday, Sundays when we're doing our live classes. So I'd actually like to use that time for vocab building, because vocab building is actually something students can do on their own. Like if they have some kind of guidance, something they can do on their own. And it's actually preferable, perhaps even, to tell students that this is something they can digest a little bit without the intensity of the lesson necessarily. So I think that's like a time. But to kind of take on board something you said, where you were saying like it would kind of be helpful to have some of these grammar specific terms before the lesson, like coming to a lesson on Kaana wa akhawatuha. If you've never seen Kaana before, and you've never seen Sara before, and you've never seen Osbaha or Laysa before, like those 4 verbs are some funky verbs in their own ways, right? Like when you first encounter Osbaha, you've maybe never seen verbs that are form 4 like that before. You've maybe never seen the verb aslama. You've maybe never seen arada. So that's probably new to you. Kan is hollow. Sara is hollow. But they're hollow in different ways, because it's kana yakunu, but sara yasiru. And then laysa is its own kind of particular verb because it doesn't have a present tense. It's just laysa. So like Yeah, so having some of that vocab, but before the lesson, because we quite often focus on introducing the new cab for the lesson in the lesson, and that sometimes doesn't give the student actually enough time to really process it. And like certainly for me, something that really amazed me actually about yourself and other students who are in the class with you, like Asima and Juan as well, like you guys were so much quicker at absorbing things than me. Sometimes I just needed 3 to 5 business days to process something. And I remember being in my lectures at university, and like our lecturer would just deliver something in the beginning of the lesson or explain something, and would be expected to be able to put it in practice by the end of the lesson, in one lesson. But my, like, obviously that was horrible for me because I just usually needed more time to process it. And I think we'd ease that burden quite a lot if we preemptively gave students vocab before lessons, not too much before. I wouldn't want students to be sitting on Kaana too long before we explain it, but like within the week, if you know what I mean. That's something that we can really utilize, inshallah. That's something I'll definitely think about, because like we're planning on running the intensive. I believe the first session is the 7th of October, something like that. It's the Saturday, maybe second Saturday of October, inshallah. Yeah, so we've got some time to add other things in the curriculum, which would be useful to do, inshallah, for sure. Yeah, mashallah, that's very useful. Something else that you mentioned as well. I wanted to talk about it at the time, but you mentioned a few times about being connected to the masjid. Now, this is something that I think, I mean, even in the Muslim majority countries, but it's perhaps more challenging in the West. Like, particularly the men, where like it's actually prescribed for us to pray the salah in the masjid. Like, it's really, really something that's really neglected, and it's nice to kind of hear you talk about how that had an impact on you being able to get knowledge from different types of people as well. It sounds like you've sat at the feet of lots of different types of people and sat next to different people, and had had that kind of impact actually in the masjid in the US. I think in the US, like, it seems like you guys do masajid quite well. Like, is it accurate to say that a lot of your masajid are like Islamic centers? Like, you have more than just the salah going on in the masjid? Or is maybe I'm kind of stereotyping Americans as just doing everything big, but I'm sure I've seen lots of masajid in the US that have like basketball courts outside and stuff. But that's very rare in that's very rare in the UK. That sort of thing, like where you'd have other rooms for whatever else.
Even up north where there's more land and spread out. I'm assuming like Birmingham or Nottingham and things are a little bit more spacious.
You are right in the sense that, like in London, often there's a lot of masajid, particularly in central London, where like the rooms are piled on top of each other. There might be like a 6th-floor masjid that's like fairly small rooms, but like 6 floors. Yeah, there's one on a street called Dude Street, in central London, which is like that. So you are right, but I mean, I don't know. Even up north, like quite a lot of the masajid are like conversions from like terraced houses that have been converted into masajid and stuff. They're quite often not like purpose built, like masajid, but there are very, very big masajid that do that. Like in East London even. There's a really like East London Mosque is a massive masjid, and there's a huge building on the side of it called the Mariam Centre, and in there they've got a surgery in there, like they do circumcisions up there and stuff like that. They've got events rooms, they've got a gym in there, like they've got all sorts in there. So there are things like that, but I don't know. I just got the feeling from what I've seen from the US, and even when I was in the US, when I was in California, like I saw a couple of times that there were just more kind of purpose-built, bigger Islamic centers.
Yeah. I mean, of course, U.S. is pretty huge. Like to get from New York to California by car takes probably 3-4 days, right? At least. So it's a big country. However, from my experience in places I've been, a few places I've been around the country, it depends, right? As all things depend. Like in Philadelphia, there's a very famous masjid. The name of it is slipping my mind right now. It's surprising because I always talk about it. But it's built into a row of houses, and it's about 3 stories tall, right?
Okay.
So there's nothing outside to do. There's not even much place to park, let alone anything else. You see, it's quiet, and then it's time for salat, and the street fills with niqabs, and you see all these people coming out with those, and it's full, right? But then you go somewhere else, like in Boston, and I'm just speaking to the New England area because that's where I've been living for the last 10 years or so. You'll have a huge masjid with a huge parking lot that has structures so you can park above and above. It has 4 full floors. There's a gym. There's a full-time school. There's a masala. There's another second floor masala for the sisters. There's another masala for sisters with children. Then there's a cafe, and then there's a restaurant. Then there's a Yemeni restaurant. Then there's a Somali restaurant. So, it depends on where you go. The oldest masjids in the country are usually converted from banks or store shops that used to be part of like the Nation of Islam, and then when they embraced Sunni Islam, they would convert it to masajid. So some of the oldest ones, the oldest one I know of is probably like from 1920 in Detroit. Used to be a bank, right? So there's no real space for a basketball court. Even though they always talk about it, they might put a basketball hoop on the parking lot or something like that. But generally speaking, there's just a masala and a bathroom, right? So it depends on where you are. All over the country, they change and they're different. For me, I'm always, so I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, there was a masjid I used to go to, and I had a family, so I started getting involved with the board and whatnot. And one of the people on the board from Togo, he always used to say, Rasheed, you should just be here for the salat. Why aren't you here? Just come for all the salat. And I was like, yeah, I'll pray at home, just like everybody does. I got to pray at home. He said, you should be here. We need you here. We want to see your face. I want to see your smiling face, all these different things. How brothers are. So eventually I was like, okay, well, I'll try and make it when I can. It was like a 15-minute drive to get there. And so I made an intention always to live next to a masjid if I couldn't. I just made an intention always to live next to a masjid. So then the last 3 places I lived were circling the masjid I'm at now. And I was fortunate to be able to get a house near the masjid I live now. So now I'm the guy telling people, where you been? I haven't seen you. Come to the masjid, come to Fajr, come join us, And the brother who did that to me passed away. So I think I kind of like took on some of the energy when he passed to do that type of thing. And I'm always reminded of the hadith, and I can't quote it properly, but the way I like to tell people is that, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he saw you hanging out at home, he'd come burn your house down. Because there's a hadith along the lines, right? And the reward of making Isha in the masjid. So I try and push people for Isha where possible. And then, Fajr is just, I find that the people that come to Fajr are the most reliable and sound people. And to be around reliable, sound people makes me a better person. It makes me more sound. It makes me better at work. And then I also stress about work less, right? Because your identity is by what you do the most. At least that's what I find. If you are a carpenter, you'll say, I'm a carpenter, right? If you're an Arabic teacher, you say, I'm an Arabic teacher. If you are a salesman, you say, I'm a salesman, right? But what if you do a job and then you leave that job and you're still making salat in the masjid? And then you leave that job and you're still making salat in the masjid. And then, someone in your family passes that you really depended on, you're still making salat in the masjid. And then you start learning new languages or getting new hobbies, or you decide to be a jiu-jitsu squatter like Sam. And you're doing that for like 3-4 years, right? But you're still making salat. Eventually, with all these changes, the only thing constant will be who you are. And if you've been consistent with your salat, then you won't really care how you change and what you become, because you have that identity that you're banking on, right? You've been making an investment in your identity as a person who makes salat, as a person who tries to be in the masjid for the 5 or 6 salat, right? I try not to even think about 5. I try and think of 6 salat. And if you form your identity on that, then everything else just becomes a little bit more irrelevant. And when things become irrelevant, you become confident, you become focused and more carefree. And a lot of people want that in their lives, right? So
may Allah make us all people who have an identity upon the haqq and upon khair.
I mean.
I want to say
Jazakallah.
Just like my tullab as well, just like my beloved students, may Allah bless them and increase them in their knowledge. And may Allah reward them for being people who have chosen the Arabic language as something worthy of their time and of their resources. So, that's a very nice place for us to end, inshallah. I'd like to end by saying thank you so much for giving us some of your time at the Arabic with Sam podcast, and It's been an absolute pleasure to get back in touch with you, see that you're still engaged in learning the Arabic language, and even before we turn on the cameras, for you to be speaking Arabic with me as well. It was really nice for me to hear, mashallah. That's very nice. So before we go, I'd like to just kind of openly ask you if you have any parting advice for the Arabic students. Of course, there'll be lots of people listening who are much earlier in their journey than yourself. People who are in the very beginning, maybe they've just finished learning alif, ba, ta, or they've learned a few words of vocabulary, or they've made a decision in their life that it's time to finally have an understanding of the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What advice would you give to somebody in that position for learning Arabic?
I will give good controversial advice.
Let's have it.
It's the same advice that I give to my own family. And I've been lenient with my own family, and then I've realized that this advice is really all that matters, and I need to be more firm with my own family. And that is, it's not worth the time and effort to try and create context and meaning and philosophy around letters and words and things. Sometimes it just takes a matter of sitting down, reading the word 200 times, forgetting it for a day or two, and read it again 200 times, and putting it in your bank. Sometimes the emotions and the fears and the apprehensions get in the way, and arguably that's just shaitan trying to stop you from doing what you love and falling in love with the language of Allah, and getting all the blessings of being able to speak the language of Jannah. So I don't know how to put it kindly for those who are more politically correct and thoughtful, and are probably gentle sisters maybe out there watching, but for all the brothers out there, suck it up. Just put the 15 minutes a day, cut it out your schedule. I mean, you could scroll a little less, you could eat a little less, you could sleep a little less. No, don't sleep a little less. But there's many things that you can do that you can find 10 minutes, 15 minutes in your day, and just repeat it. Don't think about it. Don't ponder over it. Don't question yourself. Don't question other things. Don't think about the outcome. Don't think about goals. Don't think about what you're going to achieve. Just like when you brush your teeth, just do it. And then after you've done it a number of times, you'll have something. And it may not be the most impressive thing. It may not be the most robust thing. It may not have significant meaning and robust philosophical background, but you'll have something. And that's something you didn't have before. And inshallah, it'll stick with you. And everything I've done that has been good has been just from, being like, man, Sam did it, so I'm going to go do it.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Arabic with Sam podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.